Hi friends, it's Deanna Willison with Our Blooming Catholic Life, and I'm coming to you today with a little bit different book review. It's a Wednesday, so it's Franciscan grab bag. You know that when I go on vacation, I love to grab local history books. This one got me by surprise. I found it at a battlefield in Maryland that I'd never been to before. It was, I've forgotten all the words. It was on the way to Gettysburg, we'll say. I can look that up. But it just said growing up in the 1850s, the Journal of Agnes Lee. And I didn't really process any of that because it's super fancy script, right? I'm guessing they're imitating the script in the journal because this is a young lady's journal. She began it in December 1852 at the early age of 12. An articulate young woman, her stated ambitions were modest. The everyday life of a little schoolgirl of 12 years is not startling, she observed in April 1853. Again, very stylized numbers. But in fact, her 5-year record of a Southern girl's life is lively, unpredictable, and full of interesting detail. Agnes engagingly describes weddings, lavish dinners, concerts, and fancy dress balls. No mere social butterfly, she also recounts hours spent teaching slaves, struggling with her conscience, and questioning her own spiritual worthiness. The volume concludes with recollections by Mildred Lee about her sister Agnes's death and the garden at Arlington. Growing up in the 1850s includes an introduction by Robert Edward Lee D. Butts, Jr., great-great-grandson of General Lee, and a historical note about Arlington House by Marilee Tyler Freeman Cheek, director for Virginia of the Robert E. Lee Memorial Association. The editor is Mary Custis Lee DeButts, is Agnes Lee's niece, and is co-editor of the Charlotte Haxall Noland she must have lived from 1883 to 1969, is published by the University of North Carolina Press. And if you haven't figured it out by now who this little girl is, she is one of Robert E. Lee's daughters. What an interesting look into very unique families situated in that period of time. I've only read the first major section of the book, Part 1, the Journal of Agnes Lee. I read the part where she lived in Arlington. You can see the section headers. Really easy to see. The next section is going to be when her dad moves the family to West Point. At the end of the first section, Dad and Mom and I guess some littles are already at West Point, but she's still at Arlington with her grandparents. And there is a very tragic death in the family. And I think it's really where Agnes is dealing with that death and spirituality that really comes out, that is really intriguing to me, especially at this point in my life. You know, being a secular Franciscan, we are called to pray for the dead. And you know my love of St. Stanislaus Popinski and the Marian Fathers of the Immaculate Conception. That is one of the things they do as well, is they have the Holy Souls Sodality and praying for the souls of the dead that came from St. Stan, especially in his case, praying for soldiers who die on the battlefield and those who die unexpectedly in war. So that really speaks to this book, to this time of history, and touring various battlefields. I'm on the East Coast of the United States of America, and so there are a lot of Civil War battlefields around here. A lot of Revolutionary War places you can visit too. So this is very interesting. The book starts on Christmas Eve of 1852, where the little girl has been given a journal as a gift. It sounds like kind of like a nanny / tutor kind of forced her hand in the beginning, and it's just lovely. It's interspersed with various photos. Here's a photo of her grandma who owned the house. It tells you what collection the photos or artwork has come from. They weren't in the original journal, but they have added period pieces throughout, as well as like some pages from the official Register of Cadets. So there's various historical documents placed throughout, which really add to the charm of the book. I'm going to say that, the charm of the book. They've also included all her original spelling. It's obviously not her handwriting. Don't worry, it's not that super fancy script. But there are times when she abbreviates people's names. It's like she might have mentioned him in the sentence before, like I'm just saying, like Sally, and then the next one was S with a line after it. She just doesn't write everything out. It's kind of funny. She does it only seems to be with proper nouns, I think. That's really cute, I think. The book has done, the editors have done an extra special treatment of it as well, because she may say aunt so-and-so or cousin so-and-so, and then there's always a footnote. So this one is, I will miss Aunt Lewis Christmas present so much. I think Aunt Lewis had just passed away, and she's, again, this is one of the deaths that she's really encountering her spirituality. And it tells you who she is in the footnote. Aunt Lewis was Eleanor, in parentheses, Nellie Park Custis Lewis, 1779 to 1852. That was Agnes's namesake and one of G.W.P. Custis's sisters. Who's G.W.P. Custis? That would be George Washington. I think it's Park Custis. Yes, he was Martha Washington's grandson and George Washington's adopted son, but it's this little girl's grandfather. It's complicated, but you get used to it as you read the book. The family relations are definitely, I think everybody's a cousin in the end kind of thing, kind of family, because it's just a little girl writing. So the people who are aunts and uncles, they may not actually be, like her mother's sister or something, family, friends. There's also a number, because of who her grandparents were, there's a number of very famous authors and politicians that pop in and out of her house. And then because of who her dad is, I'm sure that will continue. There's a list. Features in the book include the footnotes, of course. Illustrations are all given credit here in the beginning. There is a foreword. I think I told you about the features in the back, the additional thing. There's various family letters that they've included, which is a nice touch. Recollections from the sister. Again, a number of other pictures, as well as there is an index. So if you are more looking for research on the history, there is a very healthy index in the back. Yeah, it's a number of pages. Really healthy for this size book. It's not a huge book, but to have that big an index, it's so weird to say a 12-year-old girl's diary is that important a historical document, but it's such a window into that time period. It's just so beautiful. Let's just jump in here. This is copyrighted 1984, again, by the University of North Carolina Press. So Agnes Lee lived from 1841 to 1873. Her main it was called Growing Up in the 1850s, of course, but it's mainly her journal and other notes. Includes index. Oh, it does have her picture on the front. It tells you that picture was later than the dates of the journal, but it was the earliest one available, and it was provided by family members. There is the foreword by Mary Custis Lee DeButts, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing all these. A brief historical note by Mary Tyler Freeman Cheek. Introduction by Robert E. Lee DeButts Jr., and then you get to part 1, the Journal of Agnes Lee, which includes chapters of Arlington, West Point, Arlington for the summer, Staunton. Her time at going to boarding school, she is just a little girl for all times, really. And then Arlington once more. And that part 2 is Recollections by Mildred Lee, and part 3 is Family Letters, and then there's an index. I'm not super fond of the setup of the book, right? Because the bigger parts have the page number underneath them, but the smaller parts have them after the title, and it's all centered. This is a hot mess. I think because all the names were so short, could be why they wanted to center it. I have no idea. Most of them are really short, but it's bizarre to me. A bizarre layout choice, but that's not the worst thing in the world. I have read, like I say, a good chunk of it. Well, I've read that much of the book. Not quite a third, but I would say more than a fourth of it. It is really captivating. It is written by a little girl, again, of 12 years old, but it's lovely. Let me read to you this little bit. I don't want to read you. This is the part that really spoke to me, but I won't read it to you because it's the end of a section, and that's a little tacky there. Let me see. I want to get something that's a larger chunk. Some of these are very small. Here we go. May 4th. 2 weeks have passed since I last wrote, and what months and years they have been. I do not yet realize what has happened. My darling grandmamma has passed away from this earth. Oh, I can't believe it. I know it is true, but it seems like a dream. Oh, I wish I could wake to see her only once more. How lonely it is to feel you haven't a grandma anymore. I know she died a Christian, and to think she is with our Savior in heaven. They tell me we must not wish her back, but this is the first person I loved that has ever been taken from me, and it will seem so hard. Poor Grandpa is almost heartbroken and is quite sick. I wish I could write connectedly on the subject. Oh, it seems almost too sacred even to write about it, but I will try. Thursday evening, 21st of April. We drove to Alexandria with Mrs. Cook. Grandma had a headache then, but we supposed it to be one of her usual attacks. The doctor was sent for the next morning. He apprehended no danger, but would return the next day. Saturday morning, he looked very grave and told us she was in much peril, but I could not believe it. Mamma was written and telegraphed for. We asked her if she had any messages, but her mind wandered a little, and she made no answer. She clasped us in her arms and murmured some affectionate words for her little grandchildren. I climbed on the bed by her. I saw her breath come more and more slowly. She murmured the Lord's Prayer. With that on her lips, she died. That was 20 minutes after 1. I gazed on her perfectly bewildered. My eyes wildly asked for one more sign of life. It was impossible to believe that she was dead. Aunt Peter arrived shortly beforehand. The servants stood around weeping for their unconscious mistress. My headache distracted me, and poor Grandpa, I can hardly think of his agony. He knelt by her bedside and implored God to spare her, or to make him submissive to his will. I went to my own trundle bed and wished for Mamma. She did not arrive until a day or two afterwards. We followed my grandma's remains to the grave on Wednesday, 27th. Grandma was just 65 the day before her death. Oh, that funeral. It seemed as if we could not let her be shut up in the dark earth. Though I know it was only her body, her angel spirit may have been hovering above us, wanting to comfort her poor children. It is so beautiful to look through the green trees at the blue sky above and think she may be there. So we go on this journey with little Agnes. She's really growing up here. That's, for a lot of young ladies, that's a huge moment in time when a beloved grandparent, especially a grandma, dies. And then can you imagine being a young lady and going to live at Westport Point? Like, that's crazy talk, right? She did not enjoy it at first, but the opening does let us know that she did come to love it. And again, going back, when she goes back to Arlington, it's going to be completely different because Grandma's no longer there. It's quite a journey, a coming of age story. I know when I was homeschooling my son, we love to read these books. There's one, I'll have to grab it from a shelf and do it one day, that was Diaries of Young Men, I believe. One from the north and one from the south, I think. And just giving you a glimpse into their life. And these are from recovered documents, I believe, too. It's quite an interesting book. Nothing I'd ever thought I'd find. I know I had a pencil in here. I know I was making notes. Of course, I can't find them now. But I did make a few little notes in here that I thought were just really interesting. Sorry, I thought something had caught my eye here. And it also talks about coming of age, moving on, dealing with death and new circumstances in life, and growing up. A lot. It's a lot. And I'm sure we're going to get glimpses of Robert E. Lee in here as well and learn some about him and his family and what it was like in the South. Interesting, isn't it? Although not much in the deep South. West Point is not in the South at all. And then she goes to the Virginia Female Institute in Staunton, which I think is in Virginia, so not exactly deep South there either. Friends. It's a lovely little book. I have found her very engaging. It's always great to listen to somebody's story, even if it is somebody from the past, and to learn more about them and their time. I think it's such a window into the human experience. Okay, that's all. You know what? I do feel the need to say our little prayer here, but maybe not. Maybe we'll pray. Probably not a prayer little Agnes used, but maybe just a simple eternal rest grant them, O Lord, and may perpetual light shine upon them. Amen. May the souls of the faithful departed through the mercy of God rest in peace. That's where we get R.I.P. Rest in peace. May the souls of the faithful rest in peace.